Everyone, Mike here from MLive.com, joined by Justin Rogers. It was a flurry of picks all day long, Justin. It seemed like the
I can't believe they made all 10.
I can't. It felt like the Lions were perpetually on the clock. It was like they would finish a pick, we would write the story, we'd do a teleconference, and we'd be 3 picks away from doing it up again. But lots going on. I thought it was interesting. 10 picks. I assumed there was going to be a trade at some point with the Lions, either up or down or something. 0 trades. They stood pat the whole draft. I'm not sure if that was part of Quinn's risk aversion.
Just put the phone on silent at like the 5th round. He's like, I'm out.
Yeah, but they got quite a few picks. We saw more of the same trend we saw in the first 2 days. Big guys, linemen, even a long snapper in the 6th round, which we'll get to. But you guys see the stories on MLive. We don't have to run through every guy, but we can just start with the top of what we saw. Joe Dow, I thought, was a pretty interesting pick. Justin, what did you think of that pick there in the 4th round?
Yeah, what it said to me is Quinn evaluated his offensive line when he got here, and he did not like what he saw. And so he went out and he addressed it in the 1st round, in the 3rd round, in the 5th round. You're talking starters and backups. He is overhauling that unit, and that's what I see Dahl. He played tackle at college. He's probably a guard in the pros, but again brings that versatility that everybody in the NFL loves, not just the Lions. Don't let anybody fool you.
And don't forget, he also signed Jeff Schwartz. So this, to me, this bounty of offensive linemen between free agency and especially the draft now. I mean, these aren't even 7th rounders. These aren't Corey Robinsons. It's the 1st and a 3rd rounder and a 5th rounder.
Soon to be former Lion Corey Robinson.
Yeah. R.I.P. Corey. But what it tells me is that, well, it's the same thing you said, which is he didn't like something that was up there. But what I like about the approach is that with so many guys he's brought in, and not just scrubs, but guys that you would think would hope could eventually contribute sometime, is that it gives you room for error. You can get these guys. You have a true competition, and you don't go into camp thinking Riley Reef has to be my left tackle because it's air behind him. There are so many variables and options the team can do. They can have Reef on the left side and Decker on the right side. They can flip those two. You got Dahl now in the mix who played left tackle, basically in a passing situation every down at Washington State, and that offense they have out there. And so a lot of different options.
Like
Exactly. But on the inside, you have the same thing. You have Warford and Tomlinson both back, but now you have a couple of guards in the mix as well. You have Graham Glasgow there as well. You have Glasgow compete with Travis Swanson. There's legitimate competition all over the place. You can find the best configuration, the thing you like the most, who's playing the best, and move on. And I think by the time the season comes, by training camp, by the time training camp is over, you're going to see a big name or two cut from that group because there's so many bodies at this point.
Yeah, I think you need about 12 linemen, in the offseason, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some bloodletting soon. We don't like talking about guys getting cut because it's their jobs, but the group of backup linemen, your Braxton Caves, your Gabe Ickards, even Cornelius Lucas, who did some good things here. Their future is a lot less certain really quickly after this draft. That's one pick. We're going through all of them.
Antoine Williams, linebacker from Georgia Southern, which Georgia Southern does play football, we're told. He played. We talked
blue collar football, according to Mr. Williams. That fits him perfect.
He said he played all 3 linebacker positions. Talked to Quinn later. It sounds like he's not going to be a Mike, but could play either of those outside spots. I think strong side would make more sense given the Lions have some guy named DeAndre Levy playing on the weak side. But I think he fits in there, and especially on special teams. If he makes his team, and I suspect he will, Quinn said that he's going to be a big-time contributor there.
Yeah, it's the last question I managed to squeeze in on the press conference today. Big-bodied guy, 240 pounds, 245 pounds. That's maybe their biggest linebacker of the roster because they moved Coleman to defensive end. So you're talking about a thumper who can back up, who can maybe play in some sub packages on goal line. And yeah, Quinn said big time. They're expecting big time contributions on special teams. They drafted in the 5th round. There were some defensive ends on the board I liked at that spot. So I don't know this guy. I'm not going to pretend I know this guy, but they have a plan for him. If he contributes on special teams in a big way, you're talking about a Tahir Whitehead-like pick at that point.
Or Travis Lewis, and R.I.P. to Travis Lewis. But
I think Whitehead was a better special teams player early. Yeah, 5th rounder as well.
A lot of receivers I thought were on the board in that range too, and we heard going into the draft that those middle there wasn't a lot of necessarily top end receivers in this draft, but that in the middle class of the draft, that 4th to 5th to 6th round range, there was going to be some good value buys, and I thought maybe you could see the Lions go that way. But again, interesting they chose the linebacker from Georgia Southern. Certainly, I think they have a plan for that guy. Moving on to the 6th round, there's 3 picks there. Felt like 1,000, but led off with Jake Rudock, which kind of got the craziness going, the quarterback from Michigan. It was kind of interesting for me to see Justin Connor Cook Great quarterback at Michigan State, won so many games, big time talent. See him falling in the draft into day 3. And you see a guy like Jake Rudock really. I mean, a year ago, he lost his job at Iowa. That's why he transferred to Michigan. In his first couple of games at Michigan, he had 5 interceptions, and then he somehow just something clicked in that offense at Michigan. Huge down the stretch. I believe he had 14 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions in the last 5 games, almost 2,000 yards, 69% completion percentage. A great finish. Still a fringe prospect, but apparently the Lions really liked him from what they saw live in his workout in Allen Park. Definitely not going to be a threat for Matthew Stafford, but could be a threat for Dan Orlovsky on the roster.
In a lot of ways, it was a conservative draft, but I think it says something to Quinn in that he drafted a conservative quarterback. The main point I think he highlighted, the main points he highlighted that he liked about Rudock was his accuracy and his intelligence. Mm-hmm. I thought there was some sexier athletes on the board. I really liked Jeff Driscoll in this draft. I thought he offered something different. Athletes. Yeah. Well, you know what I mean. You know exactly what I mean. Runs a 4.56, offered some athleticism the Lions didn't have at the position. Instead, they went more with what they've had. I think Rudock maybe has a little bit more to offer at the professional level than Kellen Moore did, but similar type quarterback. Yeah,
I think they drafted a guy who fits what they need at that position. I mean, they have Matthew Stafford, and if you read the tea leaves or just read in general, Bob Quinn's a huge Matthew Stafford guy, and I think
he's got 2 years. Future Tom Brady is what you're saying.
Well, I just
Tom Brady.
No, but I think Stafford's under contract for 2 more years, and I suspect, given what Quinn is saying, I mean, anything can happen, but given what he's saying, it sounds like he's here for the long term, which means you're not really looking for a guy necessarily who's going to be, usurp the starter. I mean, you're just looking for a guy who's going to develop behind Stafford, be a reliable quarterback, can come in injury situations and be reliable and not make necessarily a ton of mistakes. And the best case scenario, maybe he's a Kirk Cousins who develops into a real player that you can flip for draft picks or something like that.
Based on the comment section and the debate with Stafford, we just lost about 38% of our viewers.
Yeah. What's 38% of nothing?
Yeah.
It's divided by 0.
Next guy.
Anthony Zettel, defensive end, Penn State. What'd you think?
Interesting pick. It's a high motor guy. Everything you read is all out, every play. He's kind of a tweener, doesn't fit a defensive tackle, not long enough to be a defensive end. I think he's going to play in the 4th defensive end in the rotation as of today. They could still add somebody. They could bring back Jason Jones for all we know. But as of today, I think I would pencil him in as that 4th defensive end in the rotation, playing 15, 20 snaps a game, can also be in that sub-goal line package type deal.
Because of the body count, I agree with you, but I would not be surprised if the Lions brought in a veteran
for sure.
Defensive end, maybe even a veteran defensive end that's named Jason Jones. Anything is possible.
I'd call Jason for sure.
Just from what I've seen and heard about Zettel, and even Quinn's comments, he wasn't necessarily saying this is a guy who's going to play for us. He wasn't, not like he was saying about the Williams, the linebacker. Well, he's a 6th rounder, but even Quinn acknowledged he doesn't really have necessarily a true position at this point. He played defensive tackle at Penn State, but he's too small to play defensive tackle at this point at the NFL level. So if he plays, it's going to be a defensive end, and I just don't know if he has the polish necessarily at that position to produce right away. So that's what leads me to believe there could be a veteran in the mix, but we'll see. Jimmy Landis.
Pass.
Okay, I'll take him. To me, it's the biggest surprise of the draft, and he's he's the 9th pick out of 10, and he's in the 6th round. So it's not sexy as you would say, but it's interesting because was he the only long snapper drafted? I'm pretty sure he was.
I think there's only been like 6 in the last 20 years,
and they didn't even do it in the 7th round; they did it in the 6th round, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I actually asked Quinn what. I know there's more important things going on, but this was kind of an interesting pick. What was your calculus for making it? And he just said, we evaluate long snappers just like we evaluate anyone else, and we really like what we saw. We thought he was really a good fit for us. The big takeaway here, Don Muhlbach, 12 years in Detroit, very good player, former Pro Bowler, certainly on notice. I would be surprised at this point to see Don Muhlbach on the 2016 roster.
Yeah, and I guess I will add a small point here. They clearly were interested in long snappers this offseason. They talked to a few of them in the pre-draft process, and I believe they clearly identified Landis as the best available. Otherwise, they would have taken another one. And
interesting strategy.
If you believe that there are other teams out there that needed a long snapper and could have taken him ahead of you in the 7th round, then if you really identify that guy and you don't want him taken by somebody else, then you go out and get him. If they think that Landis is an upgrade from Muhlbach and what do I know? I don't know. I don't know long snapper physics, but
Right.
then whatever. At the end of the draft, I don't care. It's such a crapshoot at the end. If you're going to get somebody that's a rock solid player for your organization for years to come at long snapper, then whatever.
He was kind of an interesting cat because he walked on to the football team at Baylor. Then he basically quit. I mean, he technically redshirted for a year after that to go play catcher for the baseball team. Batted something like .080, which doesn't seem very good. It's
pretty good.
So he quit baseball, went back to football, which turned out to be
Avila.
a pretty good. It turned out to be a pretty good investment because he played and started for 3 years for Baylor, and now he's a 6th-round pick, and he's being asked by Justin Rogers on a teleconference about renting out helicopters.
What are you going to ask a long snapper? I mean, make it fun.
There's more context, but I think it's more fun without the context, so we'll move on. At this point in the draft, my head was spinning. Apparently the Lions made a 7th-round pick because that's what the sheet says, but
Kyle.
I think I blacked out.
You could see the sadness just emanating off this guy. It's depressing working this thing sometimes.
Dwayne Washington, running back,
Yeah.
Washington, explosive athlete with, everyone is worried or was worried about the Abdullah fumbles coming out of college. This guy has even more fumble issues. Certainly does not look like a day one contributor, but maybe with an upside athlete.
Yeah, I've fumbled one out of every about 30 times he touched the ball, which is way unacceptable. But high-level athlete, great speed, great size, some explosion, showed home run ability. That's the kind of player you take in the 7th round. You see a high upside there. He's going to come in and compete with Zenner and help me with George Wynn for that 4th running back job, assuming they carry it on the roster. And
You're assuming Ridley makes the team, and I am too.
At this point, I mean, who knows? Maybe 2 young guys jump in, but you roll the dice here. It's a 7th round. Take the athlete.
You've already got the long snapper. Might as well take the athlete too.
So,
let me ask you, Justin.
Nope. We actually skipped Miles Killebrew, so we're gonna go all the way back to the top. Because
how could I forget Miles?
Can't forget the muscle hammer.
His teleconference was basically on 11 the whole time, and it was kind of funny because he's literally. I mean this without any hyperbole. I've never heard a kid more joyous, more like louder, screaming more after being drafted than this guy.
So excited.
His entire interview was on 11, and it was funny because at one point we all realized he was in a car the whole time for the interview on his way to graduation. He was in a car full of people, and he's like yelling into his phone, "I got drafted, woo!" At one point, he was like, "I'm a Detroit Lion. I get to go to work every day." It was just the funniest news conference.
Yeah, I identified
Not news
him.
conference, teleconference.
I identified him, I thought, as a possible pick. We did a draft profile on him on the site early in the draft process. One of many athletic safeties. And he wasn't my favorite, I won't lie, but it's always easy to get excited about a guy that is known as a big hitter. And this guy's considered one of the biggest hitters in the draft. He's a huge defensive back. He's like 6'2", 215 pounds, somewhere in that ballpark.
I think he's like 217, 218, but he could have been a linebacker if he put on some weight. I mean, he's got that kind of frame.
He loves hitting people. I mean, he just embraces it. I think fans are really going to like him. You know, he might not contribute much as a rookie beyond special teams, but he'll be one of those guys that becomes like a fan favorite in training camp, like right out the bat.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't discount him as a competition for Raphael Bush either.
No, he's competition for sure.
Yeah,
I just think Bush is
I'm not
gonna
sure
win
who's
that
going to, and that could be, but, Bush has had injury
Mark it
issues.
down.
The past
Starter
couple
week 1, April 30th, calling it.
Bush has had injury issues, only played 1 game last year. You just never know. And I think this guy, he's a 4th round pick, so I guess you're not necessarily counting on him to be in the lineup day 1, but he's a big hitter. I think he fits very well as, kind of playing off, Glover Quinn is at his best in coverage in space as a free safety roaming around picking off passes. I like the contrast with a guy like this who can play up in the box and hurt people, and that to me that's the big takeaway from this draft. Up and down it all throughout, it's big people who hurt people, and I like it. It's not just an infusion of size, but there's an attitude to the class, and I really do like the approach of Bob Quinn in year 1. I don't know how it'll work, but I do like the approach.
Yeah, and this team doesn't have an identity currently, so if this is a sign, this is what they're building toward is big and physical, then I think people appreciate that.
So Justin told me before this I couldn't ask him to grade the draft or he would just not reply. So I'm not going to ask you to grade it. I'm going to ask you to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah, that's dumb. I don't know which one to
He
say.
hates me right now. I can literally.
I can't think of a thing to say. Like there's, you want to rate it so bad. You rate it. I'm out. Talk to me in 2019 3-year rule. That's my stay.
Yeah, I'm not going to say how good the class is, but in terms of strategy, understanding that there was a vision that that they wanted to go out and achieve.
I hope so.
That filled holes, that brought some identity, that brought something to the team. I give it a 7, a 6 or a 7. I liked a lot the first 4 or 5 rounds. I didn't understand the last half of the draft quite as much. The Zettel pick, I mean, at that point, 6th round, you're not getting day 1 guys anyway, but he's kind of a tweener. I'm not really sure where he fits in. The long snapper in the 6th round, that was the most curious thing to me because I think he would have been there in the 7th anyway. What do I know? But that, to me, was my reaction to that. I like the draft, though, particularly at the top.
I also really like the first 4 rounds and even 5. I think Dahl makes sense for what they're trying to accomplish. Sure. We saw a stat today that 64% of rosters are constructed from the 4th round and beyond. That's going to be the bread and butter of any organization. We're not going to know with these guys. I think until a couple of years at least. But talk to me in a couple of years. I'll give you my
okay. See you in 2 years. Got that on camera. That's it's a real thing. Okay. See you in 2 years.
Yep.
That's all we got.
We're 3D at that point. 3D video.
Thanks for sticking with us. It's been a crazy couple of days, but some cool things happening with the Lions. We'll certainly be all over it. And these guys will be in the building in less than a week. Rookie minicamp is next week.
Friday?
I think it's
Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Either Thursday or Friday, one of the two. But certainly in less than a week. And so
I guess we'll be here.
We'll have more for you. For Justin Rogers, I'm Kyle Meinke. We're MLive. Keep her here.